Thank you. I still remember May 21st, 2019, like it was yesterday. I finished my shift as a bartender at 2:30 a.m. that night, and I woke up 4 hours later at 6:30 to sell strawberries for 10 hours that day, making $9 an hour, and all of that with one goal in mind: save up money for my big dream. 4 years later, I woke up in an entirely different part of the world, and my worldview slightly changed as well. San Francisco was particularly beautiful that day, and I had to pinch myself to make sure this was real. It was not only my worldview that changed, but my entire life. Today, I'd like to take you on my journey of coming to the US and share how my social environment, my perseverance, and my intuition have helped me to overcome barriers along the way. My promise to you is that this talk will help you identify what really matters to you in life and increase your chances of getting it. Or in other words, it will help you answer the question of where to play and how to thrive in life. To begin, let's go back a little bit farther than 2019. Let's go back to my roots. I grew up in a gorgeous house in Germany's countryside, and even though this may seem idyllic, my teenage years were not. I had constant arguments with my stepfather, and my response to that discomfort I was feeling when I was 15 years old was to smoke weed and go out drinking with my friends on the weekend. And my performance in school reflected that. My teachers constantly told me that my classroom behavior was unsatisfactory. I was kicked out of field trips for misbehaving, and I almost never did my homework. I still remember the time a French teacher caught me cheating in an exam. She gave me an F for it, and she told me to leave the classroom. So as I'm leaving my high school's main building, I'm realizing I need to change how I'm responding to what's happening around me. At the time, I had a few family friends who spent the junior year of high school in the US. And once I started turning off all the noise from outside and listening to my own intuition, I realized that this would be a perfect way out and something I was immediately excited about. So I asked my parents, can you give me access to the entire amount of money you've saved up over the course of my life for me? And luckily, they agreed, and with my family's help, we were able to gather the money needed. The only problem was my performance in school had not gotten better. I mean, in 10th grade, I was getting a D- in math, and I was on track to fail my English class as well. This would disqualify me from going abroad to an English-speaking country, so I had to talk to my teacher, but as you can imagine, convincing her to let me make up for my missed assignments and improve my grade was a tough discussion. I see a few professors here today, so it's probably relatable when I say that any student who is getting a D- that doesn't really have a lot of things going for them. Luckily though, there was one thing my teacher and I agreed on, which was letting me go abroad would probably be the only way I would ever be able to say a full sentence in English. So eventually I found myself sitting on an airplane to the United States of America, the country that had been portrayed to me as the land of unlimited possibilities, the epitome of following your dream and leaving your own footprint in this world. I was living my American dream, and I loved it. I remember it was easy for me to immerse myself in the American culture and even easier to learn English, because without knowing it at the time, I leveraged one of the most powerful concepts to learn any new skill. I surrounded myself with people who had already mastered it. Have you ever noticed that when you spend time with people who are really good at something you're trying to improve, you naturally get better at it? I think this is the fastest way to learn anything. Being in a different environment helped me to overcome a barrier I would have never been able to overcome back home. Now, between us, I hated memorizing vocabulary in Germany. But once I was in the US, I started talking to a girl that I thought was really, really cute. And suddenly memorizing vocabulary made sense. To give you the whole truth. But I do think that when it comes to languages, we see this as a given, but we tend to forget that this is true whether we want to be more athletic, improve our personal finances, or even be happier. I find that a powerful way to break barriers is to recognize how much your social environment impacts you and your chances of success, however you define it. New York Times bestselling authors like Tony Robbins inspired me to learn more about my definition of success. So I started reading anything and everything related to personal development. Once I finished my year abroad and I was back in Germany, I changed my habits. I started meditating in the morning and exercising at night. I became a fan of taking cold showers, and the most radical change for me at the time, I started doing my homework. And all of it showed. Suddenly my grades were much better. They were well above average, and I was able to score more and more goals on the soccer field. But something was missing. It was that feeling of empowerment I'd felt in the US. I find that people here, especially in Silicon Valley, often gather around empowerment, like we are today, or it could also be for a business idea, for a social cause, or even for sport events. So as I was finishing up high school, my biggest dream was to attend a university in California. I thought this was an amazing idea and the perfect next step in my life, but no one else did. None of my friends, family members, or teachers had any understanding why anyone would leave Europe to study elsewhere. And I can't blame them. I can still hear my dad telling me that I could get a bachelor's degree in Germany pretty much for free, while continuing to receive free healthcare and get access to affordable student housing. Now, those are pretty good arguments, especially because all I could respond was, well, yeah, but I have a gut feeling telling me to do this, which I can imagine is every parent's dream, to hear from their 19-year-old kid that they have a gut feeling to relocate to a different country, where a bachelor's degree usually costs somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. But I decided to go for it anyway, knowing that I would have to pay for tuition, flights, and most of the other costs myself. That challenge only fueled my motivation. So I gave myself 1 year to get an academic or athletic scholarship while continuing to play soccer and working a handful of jobs in the meantime. I did everything from bartending to being a waiter to being an office worker. I even once collected signatures for a small political party that cared about the freedom of animals, just to help them get on the election ballot. But despite all my efforts, I didn't really have anything to show for after 10 months. And that brings me back to May 21st, 2019. As I mentioned, I was selling strawberries all day, and I do recall my dad had just forwarded me another admissions email from a German university. And that night, my soccer coach told me that I would not even be on the travel roster for our away game that weekend. On top of that, the organization that was supposed to help me get scholarships had gotten nothing. They simply weren't doing their job. So after paying them thousands of dollars already, I had to stop working with them. I was devastated. Have you ever worked for a dream so hard, but you just couldn't see any progress? That's how I felt. But luckily, I kept going, because 2 weeks later, Menlo College reached out to me. And I immediately knew that this was where I would want to spend the next 4 years of my life. The only problem was I didn't even have enough money to pay for freshman year, despite the scholarship Menlo offered me. And that problem only became bigger when I signed my enrollment letter with Menlo using the funds in my grandmother's bank account as a bank statement. I'm sorry, Stephen, but she was the only family member who just had enough money to cover the cost of the first year, but she also had 17 grandkids. So it was obvious that I would not spend a penny of her life savings towards my tuition. I needed a solution. I had 3 months left until August, and I needed money. And at the time, I heard from a friend that he was going door to door selling donation memberships for the German Red Cross. The hook was that 100% of his salary was commission-based. But I decided to give it a try, and it was that job that helped me to break through. This is a picture of me going door to door. That was 1 year later during COVID, but you get the idea. And as you can imagine, this job comes with a lot of rejection, but I loved it anyway. And I'm sharing this because I believe that my perseverance in challenging times helped me to put myself in a position where I was able to leverage my strengths, do something with a purpose, and achieve my financial goals. I can imagine that a lot of young adults struggle with finding the right job right away. And I can say, at least in my case, it was worth to keep trying new things. This was the 8th job I did that year. And it was that one that helped me to break that financial barrier. Now you can imagine that people back home thought I was crazy. I was going door to door, saving up money to study abroad. But to me, Menlo College was the best thing that has ever happened. I mean, coming back here and reconnecting with all of you has felt like coming home. And I'm very grateful that I was able to contribute to the campus community by being a class president, a living learning community founder, a university innovation fellow, and a student athlete. I even had the chance to study online for a few months in Brazil. And to top it all off, I received an internship offer from one of the most competitive consulting firms in the world. Securing a job that had a 1% acceptance rate from a firm that mainly recruits from Ivy League schools showed me that all of my hard work had paid off. I mean, who would have thought with my D- in math and my hard fought for a D in English? This job comes with the privilege of solving some of the world's hardest business problems for its most successful companies. And I think it's pretty cool to do all of that with this view and colleagues who are among the most fun and intelligent people I have ever met. So it may be surprising to you when I say that 1 week ago, I quit my job without having anything lined up whatsoever. And I can see that some of you here in the first row are thinking, why would you quit a job that you had fought so hard for? Especially given the current macroeconomic trends. And all I can say, standing here, is I have a gut feeling telling me to do this and to travel for a little bit before diving into a new adventure. I'm sharing this because our intuition can often be overlooked as one of the most powerful decision-making tools, just because it can't be rationalized or measured. Just like our internal happiness can't be as easily measured as our grades, our job title, or our salary. But does that mean it's less important? I'm a big fan of crushing your goals and excelling in a performance-driven environment. But the door to happiness always opens from the inside outward. I believe that this is the sweet spot and the fastest way of knowing what you want and increasing your chances of getting it. Or in other words, break barriers in your life and innovate the change you're looking for. Now, I want to add that without my family's help of bringing me to the US for the first time and Menlo College's ecosystem and so many other people, I wouldn't be able to share any of these achievements. But I believe if we find our own path, life blesses us with the luck that we need to be successful in the long term. Now, I would make the bold statement that these areas are not just limited to our individual lives, but they can also be applied when leading teams or perhaps even navigating organizations. In fact, many organizations have a lot of questions on how to champion these elements in a business context. Management consulting firms help answer those questions, and they categorize them as where to play and how to win. Now, we might have to change the language a little bit to make it fit that business context, but the idea remains the same. If Fortune 500 companies pay millions of dollars to identify where to play and how to win or how to thrive, maybe it's worth for us thinking a little bit more about the answer to that question for our own lives as well. Thank you so much. Thanks.